wind cut through the canyon like a whip, carrying the smell of dry sage and gunpowder. The sun was sinking low behind the ridges, painting the land in a bruised orange haze. Elijah Boone rode slow, his boots caked with dust, his hat pulled low to shield his eyes from the glare. He'd seen his share of blood and sorrow, but the figure slumped against the rocks ahead stopped him cold. A horse lay dead nearby, ribs showing through its hide, and beside it a woman sat wrapped in a torn blanket, her head bowed. Her hair was tangled, streaked with blood and dirt, and her lips trembled with each breath. When he stepped closer, she lifted her face just enough for the dying light to catch her eyes, pale green, the kind that might have been pretty once before all the pain. Her voice was a whisper, cracked like dry bark. She said she didn't need water, didn't need food. Just kill me fast. Elijah froze where he stood. He'd heard those words before, from men bleeding out on battlefields, from outlaws caught in their own traps. But never from someone so young. He set his rifle against a rock, crouched low, and said quietly that he wasn't going to hurt her. She didn't respond. Her hands clutched the blanket tighter, knuckles white. He tried again, asking what had happened. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the low moan of the wind slipping through the stones. Then she said it, barely a breath. They took everything. My brothers, my home. Then they left me. Her voice cracked at the last word, and she began to shake. Elijah's stomach turned as he saw the bruises on her neck, the cuts on her wrists. He wanted to reach out, but she flinched back like a wild thing. He stood up slow, eyes scanning the horizon. Bandits, maybe, or worse. He'd seen what men did when law rode too far behind them. He told her she was safe now, that he'd build a fire, fetch water, and they'd talk when she was ready. But her eyes darted to his belt, where his pistol rested, and she whispered again, this time sharper. Kill me fast, please. The words hit him harder than a bullet. She wasn't begging from fear anymore, she was pleading for release. He looked down at his shaking hands and swallowed hard. He'd put down animals that were suffering, men too, when mercy demanded it. But this was different. He tried to tell her she didn't know what she was asking, but her eyes locked on him with a kind of hollow finality. She said something about a mark, something about what they'd done, but her voice faded before he could catch it. The blanket slipped a little as she spoke, revealing just enough of her shoulder for him to see something dark, something that didn't look right. He knelt, his chest tight, and told her he had to see what was wrong, that maybe he could help. She shook her head fiercely, clutching the blanket again, but her strength was gone. When he gently pulled the edge back, what he saw beneath made his breath hitch and his body stagger backward. Her skin was mottled with black streaks, the flesh near her collarbone twisted and swollen, veins running dark like ink beneath the surface, and burned into her chest, seared by fire or blade, was a symbol, circular and jagged, still red and weeping. The edges looked unnatural, almost pulsing in the dying light. Elijah stumbled to his feet, his heart pounding, a chill crawling up his spine despite the heat of the evening. She turned her face away, ashamed or broken. He couldn't tell which. He wanted to speak, to ask who did it, but the words wouldn't come. The sight of that mark was enough. He'd seen wounds from war, from beasts, from men gone mad, but nothing like this. It looked like it was burning from the inside out. Elijah backed away a step, gripping his rifle again, his mind spinning between fear and pity. The woman looked up one last time, her eyes wet but steady. She told him it was too late, that once the fire started inside, it never stopped. The wind howled through the canyon again, scattering the dust between them. He didn't know whether to believe her or not, but when he saw the faint smoke rising from her skin, curling upward like breath from the earth itself, the horror in her words no longer felt like madness. It felt like truth. Elijah didn't sleep that night. The fire he built was small, no bigger than a lantern's flame, and even that felt too close to her. The woman lay wrapped in the blanket again, trembling but silent, her green eyes fixed on the horizon. He'd tied his horse near the stream and sat with his rifle across his knees, every muscle tight. The wind hissed softly through the canyon grass, and somewhere in the dark a coyote cried. He couldn't shake the image of that mark seared into her skin. It had burned through his mind every time he closed his eyes, dark lines curling like a serpent glowing faintly in the firelight. He'd never seen anything like it. He'd asked her again what happened, but she'd only whispered that it wasn't men who did it. It was something worse. She wouldn't say more, so he'd fallen quiet. The rancher had seen strange things before, storms that came without clouds, cattle that spooked for no reason, but nothing that left a human like that. Still, he couldn't ride away. He'd lost too many to the cruelty of this land to leave another soul behind, no matter how broken she was. By dawn, she was burning with fever, sweat beaded across her forehead, and her lips cracked when she spoke. She asked for water, and when he brought it, her hands shook so badly she spilled most of it down her chin. Then she started to whisper names: Samuel, Thomas, Mother. Family, maybe. Her voice grew faint, and Elijah felt a weight settle on his chest. He took a cloth from his saddlebag, dipped it in the stream, and pressed it gently to her forehead. The moment the cool touch met her skin, she screamed. Her back arched, her hands clawed at the dirt, and the mark on her chest glowed brighter, lines of orange fire pulsing like veins of molten iron. Elijah jerked back, dropping the cloth. The air filled with the smell of burnt flesh. He called her name, though he didn't even know it, and tried to hold her shoulders. Her skin was hot enough to blister his palms. Then, as suddenly as it began, she went still. The glow faded. Only the rasp of her breath remained. Elijah sat there, shaking, staring at her chest rise and fall. He knew then this was beyond anything a doctor could fix. The mark wasn't killing her, it was consuming her, and she knew it. That's why she'd begged him to end it. The thought made his stomach twist. He wasn't the kind of man who killed the helpless. But when he looked at her, sweating, trembling, her body fighting against something unseen, he wondered if mercy sometimes came from the barrel of a gun. Hours passed. The sun rose high and burned away the morning chill. He cleaned his hands in the stream, packed his saddle, and decided he'd take her to town, to the doctor, the priest, anyone who might know what to do. But when he returned to where she'd lain, the blanket was empty. He spun around, eyes scanning the rocks, hand on his revolver. Her footprints led toward the ravine, bare feet dragging through the dust. He followed them, heart pounding. At the edge of the drop, he found her standing in the wind, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Her hair whipped around her face, and her eyes were glowing faintly now, green fire behind the pupils. She turned as he called her name. For a heartbeat, he saw peace in her face, like she'd made her choice. Then she whispered, almost kindly, that it had to be this way. She told him to run, that when it started again, she wouldn't be herself. Elijah took a step forward, his voice breaking, begging her to stop, but she smiled faintly, tears cutting clean paths through the dirt on her cheeks. Then the mark flared, brighter than the sun. A sound tore from her chest, half scream, half thunder. The air rippled with heat, and Elijah stumbled backward, shielding his face. When he looked again, the woman was gone. Only ashes remained, drifting upward into the pale morning sky. The ground around the spot was scorched black, the rocks cracked like glass. He stood there a long time, his rifle hanging limp at his side. The canyon was silent except for the whisper of wind. He thought of her words, of the fire that started inside and never stopped. He didn't know what curse she carried or what men or things had marked her, but he knew it had been real. As he turned to leave, he saw something glint in the ashes. A small metal locket half melted with a single initial still visible. An S. He picked it up, closed it in his hand, and walked back to his horse. When he rode away, the horizon behind him shimmered with heat, and the faintest trail of smoke rose from the ravine, curling up into the sky like a spirit refusing to rest.